Thursday, July 24 edition of PFT PM, the final two episodes before PFT PM returns to the vault, only to be released when needed after 9 a.m. Eastern, when big news happens. And big news always happens in the National Football League. By the way, speaking of big Shield coming August 19, I really wasn't planning to make another pitch for the book, but it is selling like digital hotcakes. We've got more pre-orders for that than any of the prior books that I have put out there, which is very encouraging. Now, it will also be encouraging if people like it, and I think that they will. It's just hard to tell because I'm too close to it. Anyway, the NFL will not like it, although it's not about the NFL. It's about a fictional professional football league with a backup quarterback who becomes engulfed in the world of gambling and the mob. Not about the NFL. Not in the least. Let's get to it. This is the time of year where if you're a fan of a team, you're kind of constantly waiting for that dreaded alert on your phone. And I go all the way back to 1993. I was in Charleston, West Virginia to take the West Virginia bar exam 2 years, after I'd taken the Pennsylvania bar exam. Was coming back to West Virginia. Wife and I were settling down here, yada, yada. I remember getting the newspaper on like day 2 of the exam and seeing in the blurbs in USA Today that Terry Allen, former Vikings running back, had torn his ACL, and I was gutted by the news. But you're always waiting for that bad news that one of your favorite players on one of your favorite teams, or your only favorite team, because really you should only have one. You're not doing it right if you have more than one, is injured. And it may be serious. And so I use that as the preface because the news today, just out of the blue, Justin Fields, new Jets quarterback, carted off with an apparent lower leg injury. That doesn't tell us anything. And look, they don't use the cart lightly. The cart gets used if there's any doubt about whether or not the player should be putting any weight whatsoever on the leg. Otherwise, they walk off. So anytime the cart comes out, that begins this process of, oh, crap. What might it be? And then you just wait. And it could end up being nothing. It could end up being something. It can end up being season ending. But anytime that cart, you get that alert that the cart has been used and it's the quarterback of your favorite team, you just feel the air go out of your lungs, the blood drain out of your heart, and you just wait. So Jets fans, I feel for you because this is just part of the risk that happens everywhere once training camp opens, even though quarterbacks are as protected, more protected, especially at practice, than any player on the field. Once you start moving around, things can happen, things do happen, and it's the one great unknown. It's the known unknown of training camp and football season. We know injuries will happen. We know it will derail seasons. We know it will open the door for Cinderella stories like Kurt Warner. We just don't know when, where, and how it's going to happen. But it happens, and we know it will, and it will continue. So hopefully Justin Fields is fine. Meanwhile, training camp is still very early, and there will be more injuries once we get to the preseason, regular season. It's just part of life in the NFL. It's inevitable. And it's unfortunate, but it's reality. The stadium in D.C. at the site of the old RFK venue is moving closer to becoming a reality. And not long ago, it looked like D.C. Council was not going to be rushed by anyone. They were on their own timetable. It might blow the window to open the new stadium in 2030. They want to have it ready to go because they want to bid on the FIFA Women's World Cup, the Men's World Cup of Rugby. In 2031, they claim that hundreds of millions of dollars will flow into D.C. because of that. Now, all of a sudden, the team and the chair of the D.C. Council, Phil Mendelson, they come together, they adjust some of the terms of the deal, and boom, they're going to vote next week. They have 2 days of public hearings, July 29, July 30. They're going to vote by the end of the month. And in the reporting I've seen, the unspoken implication is, which, really every implication is unspoken, so I'm being expressly redundant. The implication is the deal's going to get done. And is it a coincidence that this is all happening in the aftermath of President Trump trying to inject himself into the situation with first insisting on the Commanders changing their name and then suggesting that if He's asked to help get this done. He's going to require the name to be changed. And look, there's nothing suggesting that a name change is going to be part of this, but it's two separate worlds. From time to time, we can only assume there will be a renewed effort by the commander-in-chief to get the commanders to change their names, especially once it's official, if that happens next week, that the commanders will be coming back to D.C. in the same town where the president is, even though they won't be coming back until 2030. And I assume the current president won't be in office come 2030. I assume. But you know what they say about what happens when you assume. I'll assume I'll move on. A couple of people sent me this. And look, yesterday I said it was one of the rare occasions that I don't regret staying on that cesspool known as Twitter, previously now known as X. I call it Twitter just because I prefer to call it Twitter. And to me, it's always Twitter. And it still is a cesspool. But got a question yesterday that ended up being very useful. We'll talk about that again in a second. This is one of those days I don't regret making my email available because two different people alerted me to an ESPN article about holdouts. And it looks at holdouts from all angles. It's a holdout hashtag long read from John Keim of ESPN.com. There was a paragraph in particular with quotes from Bill Polian, Hall of Fame general manager. And at the very bottom, he was talking about all the factors that come into play and all the people you hear from when you're mired in a holdout and you're being criticized and you're getting support from colleagues. And sometimes management council will get involved. And whoa, wait a minute. Hang on a second. Why would management council be getting involved in a specific team's contract dispute with a player who's holding out? Why would management council do that if, as John Mara, the longtime chair of the Management Council Executive Committee, testified under oath during the collusion case, we don't tell teams what to do. We don't tell teams what to do. That would be absurd to tell a team what to do with an individual player contract. Well, who? Why are you getting involved with a holdout? What's the point of the Management Council getting involved in a contract dispute between a team and a player that has resulted in the player staying away from training camp? Now, there's two reasons. Well, three. Okay. One, they're just curious. Well, okay. No. Two, they're trying to encourage the team to cave so the player will show up. Three, they're telling the team to hold the rope. Don't give in. What do they want? No, we don't want to do that. Don't give that term. Don't do that. Oh, no, it could spread. You do that, other agents are going to want that same term for other players with other teams. We don't want that. Look, the whole gist of the Management Council, and I know they do other things, in the aftermath of the reporting from Pablo Torre and yours truly about the collusion ruling, and I said the Management Council basically exists to collude. It does do other things. I get that. But as it relates to player contracts, it's there to coordinate, which is another way of saying collude. And when Bill Polian, just in passing, mentions that one of the things you deal with when you have a player who's holding out is the Management Council can get involved, he's accidentally telling the truth. And this is how the truth tends to come out when we have legal issues involved. It doesn't come out in direct response to a Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, I want the truth, you can't handle the truth, and eventually breaks him down and he says, you're goddamn right I did. That never happens. The truth accidentally sneaks out when you're talking about something else. Isn't that how it always goes? I didn't eat the last bag of Cheetos. I did not. Did you? I did not eat the last bag of Cheetos. Hey, you know, last night while I was watching Pulp Fiction and eating that last bag of Cheetos, I thought of something. That's how the truth comes out. I don't know if that's a good example or not. It's just what I thought of. It tells me where my mind is today. I want to be watching Pulp Fiction and I really like to be eating Cheetos. But that's how the truth comes out. It never exits through the front door. It leaks out a window. And that window it leaked out of with Bill Polian was, yeah, the management council is involved in coordination, i.e. collusion. And look, none of that matters directly for the appeal of the ruling that even though management council encouraged teams to collude as it relates to fully guaranteed contracts, the teams didn't actually collude, even though I think the evidence shows they did. That said, the three-judge panel that's going to be hearing this, they're not sequestered from the world. What if one of them sees my article? What if one of them connects the dots? That will influence their view of the evidence. It's not technically part of the record of evidence they are considering, but if they become aware of it, it will influence them because at the end of the day, these are not robots who are making these decisions. These are human beings. So in a roundabout way, inadvertently, accidentally, Bill Polian has helped the collusion case, potentially, depending upon whether or not the three-judge panel reads ProFootballTalk.com. I got a feeling at least one of them does. I just have a feeling. At least one of the three. I don't know who the three are. I got a feeling at least one of them do. Hopefully the NFL Players Association is monitoring PFT. If so, someone there will have seen the suggestion from yesterday that they should hire Mark Murphy, the outgoing Packers CEO, as the interim executive director. And look, when I say I'm not going to get involved in the whole Game of Thrones thing, I mean I'm not going to let people reach out to me and make suggestions under the guise of trying to help me. Hey, you know what? You'd look really smart if you suggested this. Hey, you know what? Let me tell you about my client here and why he would be a great choice. No. This is one that bubbled up organically from a reader question. Now, for all I know, it's next level chess, and they thought that I would react to it properly, and this is part of a shadow candidacy by Mark Murphy. If so, good. If that's what he pulled off, if he was able to convince me that way, all the more reason to hire him. I've gotten some feedback from people around the league who love the idea of the NFLPA hiring Mark Murphy to be the interim, if not permanent, executive director because he's in the room where it all happens. He's in the room where the collusion happens. He's been involved in negotiating these contracts as a representative of the league. And he was the Washington player rep. He was a union VP. He was involved in the 82 strike as a player. He's seen it from both sides. And he's being pushed out of his 17-year job as Packers president because the bylaws say once you turn 70, you have to step down. It's inherently ageist. Why does your birth certificate that says you were born 70 years ago disqualify you from continuing? And someone said to me, well, you know, Mark has no problem with that. Well, what's he going to do? When he took the job at 53 and they said, hey, when you turn 70, you're going to have to retire. Oh, I'll worry about that when I'm 70. At 53, it sounds great. It's like how Bill Belichick used to say, I'll never coach when I'm 70. Yeah, if you say that at 55, that's one thing. The night before you're turning 70, that's a different thing. What if Mark Murphy still has more to give? He's being frozen out of management by an arbitrary rule in the Packers bylaws, and he's available now. Does he just fade off into the sunset, or does he go full circle? There's a certain romance to the idea of going back to where he started, of doing right by the players after leading the charge for management. Maybe he feels guilty about that. I know that the NFLPA was pissed at him in 2011. I'd say let bygones be bygones. Welcome him back. He's your guy. He's your guy. He's your ace in the hole or up the sleeve or wherever the ace goes. It would be a coup. I think it would terrify the owners if the NFLPA would do it. And there aren't many things that terrify the owners. Now, I don't know if he contractually can. Maybe they'll throw a And this is the counter move. Before the NFLPA even realizes what's going on, somebody needs to sign him to some consulting deal for the next 10 years at some ridiculous amount of money to keep the NFLPA from hiring him. And for all I know, that already exists. Point is this. And when someone asked me, why did you suggest Mark Murphy? Well, number one, I think it's a great idea. It wasn't my idea. I took the question and I realized, hey, there's a hell of an idea lurking in here. I did that much. But I'm also trying to encourage the union to think creatively. Don't just throw a dart at somebody who's currently working for the union or the head of Players Inc. People that either Lloyd Howell brought in. Why would you even consider anyone Lloyd Howell brought in? Are you kidding me? Anyone that Lloyd Howell hired disqualified to be the interim executive director. No offense to any of those people. Surely they're fine people. But if Lloyd Howell's fingerprints are on their hiring, disqualified. And if they were there under Lloyd Howell and did anything other than stand up and shout and say, this guy needs to get the hell out of here. So Craig Jones and the whistleblower from the One Team Partners investigation, even though it's not about One Team Partners, that's what it's generally known as. It's about the MLBPA executive director and the NFLPA executive director, apparently. We don't know much about the details. But my point is this. Whoever was blowing the whistle about that or Craig Jones, those are the only ones. Anybody else is disqualified. NFLPA should be thinking creatively and expansively and broadening the lens. You don't want to do Mark Murphy? Fine. Be thinking about someone else that maybe you could pluck from the other side. Somebody you can pick off and pull over to your side who knows how they do things, who knows how they think. You were infatuated with Lloyd Howell because I've been dealing with unions my whole career. I know how to deal with them. How about somebody who knows how to deal with this union? It's so simple. Hopefully they'll figure it out. Last topic before we answer a couple of questions. I wasn't sure what to say about this. I just thought it was mildly amusing. John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh go to the Oval Office. First opportunity for John Harbaugh to be available to reporters. He was asked a question about his visit to the current president and former president, who, when he was president before, said some pretty nasty things about Baltimore. And I think it's a fair question for John Harbaugh to get his thoughts on visiting someone who had some denigrating comments about the city that Harbaugh's football team represents. Especially since the stadium in which Harbaugh's football team plays was subsidized in part by taxpayer dollars. You're going to see a man who previously said some horrible things about Baltimore. I think it's fair to ask him that question. That's what press conferences are for. And a credentialed reporter asked a fair question. You went to visit someone who has denigrated Baltimore in the past. Care to comment? Harbaugh didn't like it. He didn't like the framing of the question. Why would you frame the question that way? Because it's a fair question, John. You may not like having to answer it. You may not like being backed into a corner and having to justify the potential hypocrisy of going to kiss the ring of a man who crapped on the city your team represents, and you've been the head coach of that team since 2000 and so long I can't remember whether it was 7 or 8. I think it's 8, maybe it's 7. Long ass time. At least as long, maybe longer. No. Tomlin got there in 2007 in Pittsburgh. Was it the same year or the next year? Either way, it's a long time. Longer than my relaxed and aging brain is capable of remembering. So it's a fair question. It's a fair question. So, and he said all the stuff that made it come off like he's a first grader on a school field trip. Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. Why don't you ask me about how awesome it was? I'm sorry, but Chris Farley's dead. Today's reporters try to ask real questions. And it takes courage. It's another example of how there's so much fear in media and life today. We don't want to ask tough questions because you never know when the person you're asking the tough question is going to take issue with your framing or call it a nasty question or say you're a horrible reporter. It's all part of this effort to make people afraid. Everyone is afraid. Everyone is afraid of reprisal. Everyone is afraid of embarrassment. Everyone is afraid of turning the tables. Can't say anything back. Oh no. Oh no. They'll come after my network. They'll come after my company. They'll come after my whatever. Sad state of affairs. And I don't know. I'm probably going to get an angry phone call from somebody about what I just said, but I'm not afraid. And I wish other people felt that way. Real leasing dust. If J.J. McCarthy doesn't live up to the hype/expectations, how many seasons will the Vikings allow him to be on their team? 1, 2, or 3? Remember this. Remember this. And I don't know how good he's going to be. Had an 80-yard touchdown pass in practice yesterday to Jordan Addison. Although the video that's making the rounds on social media, you really can't see the ball. All you see is the ball coming in and the catch. You don't even see the ball coming in, you just see the catch. So I don't know what the ball looked like in the air. But I know it created a lot of excitement. And this is the time of year for excitement, while also waiting for the news that someone's been carted off with a knee injury. It's a weird stew of emotions if you're a football fan. But he's in year 2 of a slotted rookie contract as the 10th overall pick. Yes, his contract's fully guaranteed, but he's going to be there for the next 3 years. Like, you need quarterbacks. If Kevin O'Connell has learned anything during his time as Vikings head coach, you need quarterbacks. You need to have guys ready to go. So if for some reason J.J. McCarthy doesn't play well enough and he's benched for someone else, you still keep him because relative to what a veteran quarterback is going to cost, it's cheap. And he knows the system. He knows the personnel. There's no reason to move on from him because you may need him at some point. He's benched on merit. He may be unbenched due to necessity. Look at Bryce Young. Bryce Young got benched last year. Andy Dalton was the guy. Andy Dalton gets injured. Bryce Young's back in. All of a sudden, he's got it together. Changes the whole narrative that, oh, you can't bench a young quarterback. You may ruin him. Hell, you may make him better. Maybe the wake-up call he needs. They tried to do it with Zach Wilson with the Jets. It didn't work, but you just never know. So, I mean, this is a very literal and simple answer to the question, but he will be with the team for the next 3 years because his money is so low relative to what it would cost to find a veteran quarterback who doesn't know your system at all, unless they'd be bringing back Kirk Cousins. But still, Cousins wouldn't be as cheap as McCarthy is going to be the next 3 years. He's going to be there. Question is he going to be on the field? And how's he going to do? And there are Vikings fans that are very excited about what he's going to do. Others are a little more skeptical. I think back to 2000. I was on with Paul Allen yesterday, the voice of the Vikings. And I remembered when Dante Culpepper, who didn't play as a rookie in 1999, it was Randall Cunningham and then Jeff George. After the 99 season, they had Culpepper, who was the 11th overall pick in 99. Dennis Green tried to convince Dan Marino to come play for the Vikings for a year. He declined to do it. So they went with Culpepper. It was kind of that same, are they going to go after Aaron Rodgers? Are they going to get Aaron Rodgers? I mean, Denny Green tried to get Dan Marino, and Marino didn't want to do it. Settled for Culpepper, and Culpepper was great. They went to the NFC Championship in his rookie year. And if Antonio Freeman doesn't make the he did what catch on a Monday night in Lambeau, and the Vikings win that game, Vikings would have had the number 1 seed in the NFC that year. It was down to like the end of the season. All the Vikings had to do was win one game, and they would have locked down the number 1 seed, and they blew it, and they had to go to New York, and they got blown out 41-0 by the Giants on the grass at the time at the old, what was it, Meadowlands. It wasn't even MetLife Stadium. So anyway, there are parallels, and there's reason to be excited. The difference is McCarthy lost all of that last year due to injury. We didn't even know he was injured. Just this lightning strike out of the blue in the days after what looked to be a pretty impressive performance against the Raiders in the preseason, to the point where Chris and I were like, hey, this guy's going to be the starter. I know they're saying Sam Darnold, but I think this guy's going to be the starter. So we'll see. Jerry Arco. Would the NFL prefer the Packers be owned by an individual in order to hide how profitable they are each year with profit sharing? It appears to me the revelation in their yearly profit hurts the collective bargaining. Is there any scenario where the NFL could force a sale? I think the NFL would love the Packers to be owned by one specific individual. They wouldn't be in Green Bay by now, I believe, if that was the case. So it's good that they're owned by the public. This happened because early in the existence of the Packers, they didn't have money. And this was a way to raise money, period. The NFL would prefer every team be owned and held the way the other teams are owned and held. Now, I've argued in the past that one of the ways to cure having bad owners is to have corporations own these teams, where you have committees and bodies that ensure proper governance and other just management of the team, and the CEO of the team is accountable to someone. The de facto owner of the team could, in theory, be fired if he or she is screwing up. That doesn't mean it's going to be dramatically better. There are plenty of corporations that suck. But it is one alternative to a reality where You've got multi-billionaires who buy these teams for sport and think they know what they're doing and screw everything up. That's not good for the fans of the team. That's not good for anybody. But yeah, I think the NFL would strongly prefer that the Packers not be publicly owned, but it's too late. What are you going to do? You're going to track everybody down and buy back their stock? Every single person who has purchased stock, track down all those certificates, the worthless non-stock stock that you can't resell, that doesn't appreciate in value. I think it would be virtually impossible to pull that off. Wasp 49, do you think we'll reach a point where players who recently signed contract extensions will start asking for raises a year later because other players are getting paid more? I think we're potentially already there. It usually doesn't happen a year later, usually a couple of years, because the market keeps changing and some teams just say, hey, you signed your contract, honor your contract. I remember when the Eagles thought they were like cracking the code by signing guys to ridiculously long extensions. Who were some of the players? Sean Andrews, remember him? There was defensive tackle Mike something. I don't think his last name was something. It would be a hell of a coincidence if it was. But that blows up in your face because you signed the guy for like 9 years. And then after 3-4 years, his contract is just crap. Sorry, you signed a contract. Sir, you have signed a contract. Honor your contract. That doesn't work. That's not how you get the most out of human beings. It's just not good. And it didn't work for the Eagles. So you got to be flexible. 1 year later, it usually doesn't happen like that. But yeah, with the market always changing, that's why I've suggested for years that franchise quarterbacks should just get a percentage of the salary cap. Protects the team, protects them. You got 17 cents on the dollar that goes to the quarterback, no matter what the cap is. You got 83 cents on the dollar that you can use for your other players. Sounds fair to me. Players protected, team is protected. But they won't do it. You know why they won't do it? I mentioned this in the Napoleon article earlier. When I was asking around, because it's okay in the CBA, there's nothing against it. When I was asking around, management council won't let them do it. That was the common response I got. But they don't collude. Never collude. Just a couple more real quick. Brandon Elkins wanted to know if I've gleaned anything interesting from the new season of quarterback. The first episode was great because we got a lot of candid, raw admissions from Kirk Cousins about getting the rug pulled out from under him in Atlanta. After he got $100 million guaranteed at signing, he assumed that would guarantee him at least 2 years as starter. He gets benched during the first year. If he'd known, would he have stayed in Minnesota? I mean, it's still $100 million that the Vikings weren't going to commit. The Falcons screwed this up. They committed $100 million to a guy that they benched after 13, 14 games. And now they want to get rid of him and they can't. So that was the biggest revelation. When I started watching it, I thought, hey, man, how many PFT posts are we going to get out of this series? I mean, it was that one, and it was Joe Burrow talking about his burglary. That was it. So, yeah, hey, look, I watched it all in one day. It was entertaining, but I wasn't blown away by it. And there weren't a lot of things I didn't already know. For most of these NFL reality, documentary, infomercial shows, I'm not seeing a lot of stuff that I didn't already know. For people who don't follow it as closely as I do, okay, hey, you're going to learn some stuff you didn't know. Most of the stuff I already knew. Last one, and this comes from Will, if the Steelers fail to win a playoff game this year, which of their current starters do you think have a high chance of being gone after the season? Look, I don't know how they're going to react if they fail to win a playoff game this year. TJ Watt recently told Graham Bensinger it's totally unacceptable that he hasn't won a playoff game, and that's how long it's been. He was drafted in April of 2017. They won their last playoff game in January of 2017. I think it's a given Aaron Rodgers won't be back. And I know he only signed a 1-year deal. And he said, well, I'm staying 1 year. If it goes really, really, really well, he'll want to come back next year. He'll want to, like Brett Favre wanted to come back to Minnesota after 2009, even though it ended up being a mistake. He'll want to come back. If it doesn't go well, he won't be back, and he won't want to come back. That'll be it. So they'll probably clear out the quarterback depth chart again, and maybe they'll try to get themselves in position to draft someone who will be the next first-round quarterback who works out. Terry Bradshaw, Ben Roethlisberger, not Kenny Pickett. And also not Mark Malone. He was a first-round pick of the Steelers once upon a time. And as I say that, I'm thinking, was he? He was. At one point, he had the longest touchdown reception in Steelers history. They played him at receiver. He caught a 90-yard touchdown pass. I saw it happen live on TV when it happened. And now I got to look it up to make sure it actually did happen. And I'm not just having one of those moments that you tend to have when you land on the wrong side of 60. That's it for today. Thanks for some of your time, as always. One more edition of PFT PM before Monday. And quick programming note, Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern, a.m., PFT Live, Peacock, Sirius XM 85, 6 o'clock local time, Sky Sports Mix for our friends in the UK and Ireland. And they're so happy about it. Like the people who would always email me questions, when are you coming back? They're now emailing me to tell me we're going to be back on Monday. It's like, I know. I appreciate your emails, but I know. You can go ahead and email me, and I'm glad you're happy, and we appreciate your support, but I'm aware. Tuesday night, it's off to Canton. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, at least Wednesday, Thursday. There's a chance I'll come home after the game Thursday night because it's just a couple hours away and do the show from here on Friday. But at least Wednesday, Thursday, it'll be Chris and me in the place that Chris loves. It's his favorite road location for PFT Live. Of all of the places we go, we're going back to Chris's favorite spot to do the show. So that's next week. Thanks again for some of your time. We'll see you real soon. Check us around the clock at profootballtalk.com. Have a great Thursday. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.